All right, welcome everybody. When I wait a minute or so to have people coming in.
You want me to bring up the slides now?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
All right, welcome everyone to our second volunteer session. We are Renegade Research, 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to ME/CFS, long COVID, and associated comorbidities. And we can go next. And today we're going to talk about a little bit about us and what we do and what is it like to be part of our team, how we currently work, and what projects and opportunities we have and how you can join us. Okay, so as I said, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're dedicated to research, clinical education, and care with our medical coaching. And we also are powered by volunteers within the organization. In the clinical education, we're working on an educational platform for clinicians, and the goal of that is to have more available clinicians that are trained to take care of these conditions. We are big on collaboration, so we are looking to develop our curriculum in a way that adds to what's already out there, not that overlaps, and that clinicians can, gain additional benefits from. We also have clinicians roundtables where the experts in ME/CFS get to share their expertise openly with other clinicians and with researchers and the patient population in a forum that we host every month or so. Then we have research. Our research is agile, and it is also patient-led. And we started with the project Remission Biome, which a lot of people came to know us through that project. And we have about 10 additional research projects in the pipeline. And we also host research roundtables, which are meant to foster discussion between researchers and share what the emergent research is, how it applies to ME/CFS and long COVID, and the associated comorbidities. And we newly launched our medical coaching practice. And this is for, again, patients with ME/CFS and long COVID and associated comorbidities, where we bring together a lot of education and guidance in what is being done around research and care in ME/CFS, help patients interpret labs, communicate with their clinicians. We communicate with clinicians directly and just help to be able to make sense of everything that a patient is experiencing. And we act more as a liaison as well. Next slide. So how do we work? As I said, we are volunteer powered, and we have a hybrid model between flat and hierarchy, and we calling this collaborative leadership. We started from as a grassroots organization with the Remission Biome Project, and as we have formed a formal organization and grown as an organization, we have morphed, if you will, into what we want to see in a hierarchy, which is flat, and what we need to move things forward, which is having some form of leadership that moves things along and that works with our board to make decisions. We also have a remote global team, so everybody is working wherever they are. We have no physical offices. We work asynchronously a lot. So our team, because it's global, we're all on very different time zones, and we accommodate for all of that to work. We are powered by volunteers who are also members of the chronic illness community and their allies. And we're not just inclusive of this population, which includes ourselves, but we also are building an organization that is meant for people with chronic illness to be able to work within it. We like to have backups within our teams. It's not always possible with the size of the teams, but that is something that we are working very hard to build as a standard. And this is one of the reasons why we have this meeting today. And then as a grassroots organization, we started very fluidly. And as an organization that wants to be around and wants to be sustainable, we're working to move into strategy-driven organization that incorporates the best of everything that we have learned. Next slide. So these are our people, a lot of volunteers all over the world. I see people here from Ireland, Canada, our West Coast, Spain, Turkey, where else? Portugal. So a very diverse team. Next slide. And so what are we working on? Our current volunteers work on remission biome support, whether that is leading small group, a lot of information exchange that helps the community, data analysis, sourcing of things that the community is looking for, and working on publishing articles as well. The teams also works on communication. So our newsletter, if you receive our newsletter, and if not, you're welcome to join so you can receive it. Our website, our social media. Projects, all aspects of different projects that are going on, as well as our research project. Medical coaching, both on the coaching end and the administrative, and then operations and structure, finances and compliance, which is, big part of what our board does. And in all of those aspects, even though we have an amazing team of volunteers, there's definitely more needed, to lessen the workload on the volunteers, which is also, taxing on these conditions, but so that we can move forward with the strategies that we have planned for next year and years to come. Next slide. Okay, and Ellie and Kat are gonna tell us a little bit what it's like to be part of Remission Biome and Renegade Research.
I'm on the left, so I guess I'll go first. Hi, I'm Ellie Brocious. I was diagnosed and put on disability with CFS in 1992 after what felt like a cold that led to 6 months of terrible insomnia and having to keep my head down all the time. I live near sort of an hour away from Hopkins, and I was part of Dr. Rowe's first study with the tilt test on adults with CFS, and so I got my dysautonomia, neurally mediated hypotension diagnosis, and then a POTS diagnosis followed that. Service is one of my core values, and of course, when you get disabled, you feel a little bit lost because not only can't you help others, you're having trouble helping yourself. So I needed an outlet, so I started working or volunteering for support groups. And I needed the information and the experience of other people who had it because it accelerates your progress. And I needed to share what I was learning. After a little while, I started leading some support groups and going to national events for MECFS. Though my background is in science, physics and acoustics in particular, I love writing content, editing, organizing info like on a website. And the scientist in me loves to experiment on myself. And this group is really fun because we can think of an experiment just from a discussion we're having and then check with everybody who's had what symptom, who's tried what thing. And we learn a lot just in one day, and then we can create something more formal about that. Renegade Research, when it came along, was perfect fit for me because we can learn together, experiment together, create informational posts together, and publish. science together. And I'm with like-minded people and like-motivated people. I started out backing up others because I was not feeling so well at the beginning and I needed to hang out with this crew longer enough to get feeling better. And I needed to learn all the platforms that we use for the website, for YouTube, and all that. And now I can take more of a lead role and others can back me up. But my favorite part is when we get on Zoom together in a working meeting and catch each other by sharing screen, overlooking each other, because sometimes you don't feel like you have your full brain, or maybe all the time you don't feel like you have your full brain. So maybe if we have two or three of us on there, we can do something that might only have five typos by the end of it. So that's my story. And I really just, I love the work that we do. Hope you can join us.
I
Kat?
really love that last bit. It reminds me, way back in the 90s, I was working in IT and, in the early days of the dual Pentium processor and what just like an absolute game changer that was. And really thinking of us as a multi-processor machine is really useful. And it's nice too because the need for backup is real. Like I've been having, I had to gain quite a lot of function over the last couple of years. And then the past couple of months I've hit a bit of a slump and it's been really nice to be able to call on people to fill in to make sure that things keep going despite that. So I'm Kat Boniface. My primary trigger, I probably have many, many others, was a major concussion in 2008. And that's really what brought me to this is I was reading, a lot of the reports on Twitter, folks with long COVID mostly, some with ME/CFS from other viruses. And I was like, this sounds exactly the same. Like, what is going on here? I hit my head. This should be totally different. And so that really like, as much as I was quite severe at the time and pretty depressed about that, but also fascinated about the science of it. So it's been nice to be able to explore that curiosity, as well as being able to then apply that to myself. And of course, finding remission biome, Renegade research, like everybody's been incredibly generous. Like the first time with my first real interaction was I got prescribed amoxiclav and Tess not only like sent me a bunch of information, but sent me a bunch of supplies. She had extra supplies and just sent them on. And it turned out that some of them were things that I responded really well to. And so that was also quite nice. So I do quite a few things around here. I lead one of the groups like Ellie does, although lately she's been taking a lot more of the lead there. I do a lot of the science education. So often my big role is translation. I come from a background where I did animal science and history. I probably should have started with that. I know it's a weird combo. But a lot of my job was translating either from, the current animal science people to the historians and back and forth, or literally translating languages. Um, Translating languages is one of the things that kind of went as my MACFS progressed. But the translation of science, I can still do quite well. For whatever reason, that uses a different part of my brain. So I do a lot of, sitting in with researchers, listening to their latest research, seeing how they all fit with each other, and then synthesizing and translating that so it's actually more accessible for patients, which I find to be quite fun, and also something that is truly needed because there is so much disconnect between researchers, active clinicians, patients, caregivers. We're all coming from these different places. We all have knowledge that is needed by everybody, but we're not necessarily speaking the same language. So I'm trying to be that bridge. And there's always a million other hats for all of us as well.
Yeah, the multi-hats are very real. Okay, so what are some of the possible volunteer opportunities that we have? Fundraising is a big one. We are looking for a lead fundraising person, someone who preferably has experience fundraising, but also experience with grant writing, crowdfunding. We are also looking for HR and volunteer leads, people who can help with website and website maintenance, more help for the communications team, the newsletter, the social content creation, the transcripts of videos, which is really, really important and a really time-consuming task at the moment. And also on the different research projects, the data analysis, the management of the projects, and the logistics as well. Next. And like I said in the previous slide, we really, really need help in funding. It's our number one priority right now. We have a mixed funding model. Although we have never counted on the NIH type grants, the organizations in this space do. And that the landscape there has made so that, the funds that are available from other organizations are spread even thinner. And we do have, as an organization, we're able to source different types of funds, right? Like we have a fee for the coaching, the medical coaching, and we also have affiliates, and the vast majority of those affiliates, if not all, are things that we have vetted in a way of a personal vetting, and also the companies themselves. But we don't want to be, just posting about affiliates and, just asking in that way. So we really need help in that department. We are all helping at the moment, but none of us really have the expertise in that area. So it takes more time, more spoons, and we don't know all of the resources that are available in funding. So if you are here and have expertise in this area, or somebody who has expertise in this area, please let us know. And we are, extremely flexible with how you're able to work, as you saw in the previous slides. And we would love your help in that area. Next slide. All right, and Tess is up.
Before I get started, actually, Isabel, I realized I was assuming everybody knows you, but you didn't really introduce yourself. So maybe you could just give a quick intro of who you are,
I
what your
realized that I
background
didn't
is.
do after. I just went straight into
Yeah.
it. So I'm Isabel. I am CEO of Renegade Research. And I have been an ME/CFS patient for 43 years. So that is my background story. Yeah, thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing everybody knows who you are, but I was just going to introduce myself and just thought of that. So I'm Tess. I'm a founder of Renegade Research, and my background is I have a PhD in Earth and Planetary Science. So, and I've at ME/CFS for 20 years, along with all the comorbidities you can possibly think of. And so my, combining the scientific research background and a lot of like medical literature that I've read, my main focus is the research side of it. So today I'll talk a bit about some of the research projects that we have in our pipeline and what sort of help that we could use with some of them. So I won't go into detail about all of them, but here's some of the ones that could possibly need help with need volunteers. So many of you have probably heard about our Remission Biome project. This was the project that this whole thing started off with. And the Renegade 50 study, which has 50 participants from all over the world running through the Remission Biome protocol, is still going, but it's going to be wrapping up in the next few months. So what we need for that project, actually, I'll go into more detail about that. I'm going to give the overview first. The next one that I'll mention is the anesthesia question. And this is one that Ellie is one of the leads for. And this actually came out on Twitter recently. So those surveys are done, but we're going to need more work for that one too. In the final study planning stage, we have the V-Light photobiomodulation studies and the nicotine test phase 2. You might have heard of the nicotine test on Twitter or other social media before. And that wasn't an official Renegade research project, but this phase 2 will be. And I'll share a bit more about those in detail. And then those ones are nearly ready to go to IRB. They're close to being the study finalized. And then additional ones that we're working on are ones for GIP, which is it's studying what happens after you eat meals. Rutin, which Kat is the lead for and is related to glutamate. If we have time at the end, maybe she can tell you more about that. We have a PEM formula that Isabel came up with, and then a study looking at heart rate variability. So in more details, I mentioned the remission biome study. So where we are right now with this, we have a ton of data collected. So we're at this point, we could really use help with the data analysis side. In addition to people who understand, the science and how to do data analysis, we could use some help from people who just want to get involved, like gathering all the data, anonymizing it. There's some tasks like that we could use help with. And
Oh
then
my God.
writing
I
up,
need to emphasize that. That is
yeah.
I know it sounds like such a small thing, right? But that is huge. And it is definitely one of the
Mhm.
things that takes the most time and the most spoons.
Yes. Yeah, so that would be huge. We would love to have people join this team who can help out however they can, and we can find some way for you to help with the data analysis team. Even if you have never done this before, you don't have any background, I'm sure that we could use a lot of help. And then we also are working on a blog. And we'll be publishing papers about this study. So we need people who are good writers, editors to help out with that. And I just showed this figure on the bottom just for people to see how much data we're dealing with. So we use an app called Bearable. So we have logs of mood and symptoms, interventions for 50 people for a lot of them. Some of them have done it every day for multiple times a day. So that's just a lot of data right there itself. We have things like cognitive testing, questionnaires, and then we have wearable data and some other labs like microbiome testing. So you can see there's just a lot. We need a lot of help here. So if you're
Tess,
interested,
let me just jump in and say, when you say mood, you might be thinking of
oh,
happy mood, sad mood, that kind of thing. But mood is what it's called in Bearable, but we use it for your overall health score. So that's what we're tracking to see
yeah.
how people are improving or not.
Okay. So the next one is the V-Light photobiomodulation studies. And I am going to pull up Maya,
You're not screen sharing
who
anymore,
is
though.
the project lead. Yeah, I need to pull up the different screen for the video. Oops.
Hi, I'm Maya. I'm one of the Renegade research volunteers and research project leads. I started with Renegade research when I was very severe and just did some proofreading as much and when I could. And that's one of the great things about Renegade research is it's super flexible and it's all people who are also sick and understand the limitations of being sick, especially with ME/CFS. And it's also people who understand that just because we have limitations doesn't mean that we don't have great things to contribute and great skills, useful skills to contribute. So it's a really wonderful environment to be a part of. My specific projects, I have two. They're both red light, V light, based of using V light. And one is a gamma study for cognitive function. And that is about a 30 participant crossover study. So they'll get the active or sham device for 2.5 months and then switch. Sorry, I don't know what that noise is. They'll get so for about 6 months total, 2.5 months and 2.5 months. And then, some extra time for enrollment and eligibility. So things we need help with are always proofreading and feedback. And then some other things that are more involved in the study are, for people who can talk more, we need people who can do informed consent with the participants, participant tracking, sending out assessments, following up with participants who need to, if they've missed things. And then once we finally have data, then we'll need help with data analysis. But that's, a year from now. The other study is a vagus nerve device, so it's using red light as opposed to electrical signals that other devices use. And that is just a 10-person pilot feasibility study. So we're just looking, do we see any signal? We're sort of looking at what should we be looking at to design a larger study. And that's only for Renegade research, people who are in Renegade research. So it's not open to the public. So if you become a volunteer, you could be eligible for that study if you're interested in that. What else? If you are volunteering for anything that involves participants or participant data, you'll have to do a human studies training, which is actually, it's a self-paced online module, and it's a great opportunity to learn about how research operates. That is a requirement, and we'll help you get through that. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, Maya, M-A-Y-A, at renegade-research.org. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Didn't realize I was muted while I was talking here, saying pulling the slides up. Okay, let's see. The next one was actually. So yeah, that was Maya. So like she said, if you have questions, you can email her, or I'm involved in helping with the study. So during the Q&A at the end, if you have questions, I can help answer them. The next one I'll mention is the nicotine test 2. So this is run by Troy Roach. He also wasn't able to make it today, but he's looking for people who know about the science. He wants actual scientific co-investigators. And then we'll need help with some data analysis and some logistics of the study. So this will, all of these are decentralized studies. So there's quite a bit of logistics involved of getting, products out to the participants, and then also, tracking when people are making sure that they're doing everything that they're supposed to be tracking for the study. Isabel, you want to talk about your project?
Yeah, so the PEM formula is a combination of different supplements at specific doses that can be taken either when you have an exertion activity that usually brings on PEM, or at the onset of PEM. And this really came about because I happened to take a certain group of supplements at the same time, and others that I knew had a certain effect in me. And I happened to combine, there's 6 supplements in it at a time where I had PEM, and it shortened my PEM to much shorter than it was typically for that particular activity. So then I started doing research into all of the individual supplements, the mechanisms for the combination and so forth and so on, and trying myself different brands, which did end up having different effects. different timing from before or, at the onset, or how far into PEM I could take it for it to have an effect, whether the same amount that I had taken before were needed, and so forth and so on. So I'm continuing with the research as new information continues to come out, particularly for one of the individual components of the formula. And also into looking, are all six components necessary? Are all six components necessary for at that dose, or is there something else that I'm missing that could enhance that? So I would love some help in doing literature review at the moment. And then once the project gets started, in the logistics of coordinating shipments and everything that needs to happen within the project. All right. And here are some of the
I'm actually, wait, Isabel?
Yeah.
Oh, I think my audio video is off again, but I was actually going to ask Ellie and Kat if they want to mention their projects first
Yeah, go
before
ahead.
we move on.
Okay, my project is the anesthesia question. I myself have had very weird reactions to certain dental anesthetics, and I found ways to cope with that. And I wondered if others did, and everybody I've talked to over the years seems to have some story about either procedural sedation or um, dental or others. So we have some surveys going. The X one is kind of the easiest one that we could get done. And it did give us some guidance because we did it between MECFS and EDS. EDS has some known problems with anesthesia, people needing more or more frequent during dentistry. So it looks like we confirmed that. We're going to do a longer Google form if we can work that out, if we get enough volunteers. Um, so that's all I'm going to say about that. Kat.
If I had the spoons, I would be in every single one of these
Thank you.
because I've seen a lot of good results from these. Um, but I want to just pull out that point that Isabel made of, are all of the pieces needed? Because so many of the things that have been really effective in our population are inaccessible for various reasons. And not just through cost and physical accessibility, but also just complexity, right? So how can we simplify things? And so that's part of my goal with Rootin. I, well, actually, it was partly because of Isabel's success, with her tinkering with her PEM formula. Because I was like, wait a minute, this worked way too well. Let me come back and try it. I'd had a bottle in my cabinet for a while of Rootin. It's a flavonoid, based on the theory that it hits some of the same glutamate transporters that amoxiclav does, but is not an antibiotic. And that's one of the things, we've been looking at. Um, and I had taken it at the normal label dose and hadn't had a particular response. So, half the bottle sat there in my cabinet forever. But Isabel had a particularly strong response. And I was like, you know what? I'm having a really bad month. And then I had a really bad day on top of that. I'm just going to try this. And I took a quadruple dose. I don't generally recommend people just go and do that, right? And it was a light switch. It was a moment like I had on amoxiclav that very first time. Just I had been miserable in mood, in body. I could not even sit up in bed. I couldn't make a full sentence. And then maybe 15 minutes later, I was like happy. I felt no pain. I could sit up. It was bedtime, but I could have gotten up and done something. And then I actually had, I'd kind of tinkered with my doses, and I had a good 3 or 4 months. I even started hiking a little bit, short distances, not big hills. I kind of maxed out at about 20 minutes. I had to stay out of the sun, things like that. But, the change was incredible. And then, a few other people tried it and had some similar responses. I was definitely one of the better responders, but we had a number of people that responded to the one single ingredient. I do think that for a lot of folks, it's going to work better as part of an overall cocktail, similar to Isabel's PEM formula. But enough people responded to just this one simple thing that you can get over the counter that I thought it was worth investigating. Um, and part of the issue as we're going forward into a potential study is that, as it turns out, it does so much more than just hit those glutamate transporters. Just like amoxiclav is so much more than an antibiotic. It has like 30 different functions, which as a net tend to be positive, but you also have to look at the individual, right? Are there any reasons that they can't take it? Is one of these effects going to be a problem for them? Just like is one of the effects of a particular anesthesia going to be a problem for this person? Um, so it gets complicated, but I'm really hoping that it'll be something that we can figure out a way to predict at least who is safe to try it at larger doses, if not predict who's actually going to have a light switch moment, or some long-term gains from it. So that will be my goal with the Rutin study, to hopefully make it something that is a good, easy first line try, similar to berberine or nattokinase, that is going to help a lot of people very quickly, even if it's not going to be 100% for everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. And to piggyback on that too, one of the things that happens when, we go through this process is it's important to look at, who mechanistically, right, this has the potential to not work or cause side effects, which is something that a lot of traditional research studies are not looking at. There's a million stories that we all have that say, one person took this and it worked great for them, and another person took it and they had, either no effect or worse yet, an ill effect. Right. So what we're also trying to do when we look through all this literature is to see, um, who has the potential for risks. So people are not going into, into a project, into a research project, with that increased risk, potential. Which is why, we say, give us time to work this out. Don't just go and try these things as is. It's not to hold information or to keep it, from people, is to figure out, all of the nuances that go into it and how it plays with other things that people are taking. That's also
That's a big
something that
one.
doesn't take into consideration
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I piggyback on that, Isabel? 'Cause you
Yes.
reminded me about the anesthesia project. One of our favorite questions to ask is, are you avoiding procedures because of worry about what you've read about anesthesia or your own past experiences? And so part of the goal is to figure out what doctors are using to mitigate uh, risks to ME/CFS patients, and some of them do. They prescribe mast cell stabilizers, antihistamines before and after. Uh,
That it's completely standard in veterinary medicine and not in human medicine. And that is just such a discrepancy to me. If I take a dog, that I got from the shelter or that showed up on a farm to a vet for their first set of vaccines, they will give them a Benadryl shot. Like they won't even really give you an option. They're going to be like, you need to do this. You don't know this dog. You don't know how they're going to react. You're giving them 6 vaccines at once. Give them some Benadryl. Be prepared to give them an anti-inflammatory at home for the next 3 days. Like that should be standard.
Yeah, so we've learned that in a lot of ways for vaccines for people now, take your antihistamines before you get a vaccine. But it's same is true of your anesthesia or other new meds. And even the procedure itself may cause a mast cell response. So part of my goal with the project is to help educate people that there might be more ways to safely handle their anesthesia, um, even with over-the-counter
Sometimes we
or
need the dentist.
especially yeah,
Yeah,
the dentist is
at a
with some
minimum.
place we go most often
Yeah.
if we have access and means. So yeah. All right, back to the slide, please.
Wonderful. Thank you guys. So these are some of the tools that we use, and we put this slide here with the multi-purpose, right? So as a volunteer, if you decide to become a volunteer, you may say to yourself, "Oh, I don't know where I want to volunteer. I don't really have a particular interest or passion in any of the things that we have highlighted, but maybe you have great expertise in a tool that we use or something that we don't know about that can facilitate the work that we do, and we want those type of volunteers as well. You can team up with several departments, several teams, and help them utilize these tools to its full capacity, or at least optimize how we use it, so it can save time and spoons, because we're coming at these tools not necessarily with proficiency in them. Some of us do have proficiency in one or the other, but definitely not all of them. So that's another area where we could use some help. We use Slack for our teams, as we are doing now, Zoom for meetings. We use Google Workspace and Canva. Healthy is a HIPAA compliant platform. We use Miro for working together and designing, looking at our workflows and charts and whatnot. Calendly for scheduling, Wix and Webflow for the websites, the social medias, but we're most heavily on Twitter, YouTube, and some of the things we're currently evaluating are ClickUp, which is a project management tool, and Butter, which is similar to Zoom, but has a lot of the other tools that we've mentioned integrated in them. So yeah. Next. Okay. So to become a volunteer, if you have already started the process and need to move forward, email us at people@renegade-research.org. And if you haven't applied yet, that is the link to the application, and we'll go ahead and put that in the chat so everybody can see that. Next. And we'll move forward to questions. I don't see any open questions in the Q&A. If you guys didn't know, I don't know. I'm not sure that we said anything at the beginning. You can type your questions into the Q&A. You can choose to do those anonymously, and we will just read your questions.
There was a hand briefly. I don't know where it went.
Yeah.
We can wait a couple of minutes and see if there are any questions, and if not, we can end it here. And then if any questions come up, you can email us at people@renegade-research.org. Do we have that link?
I'm getting it now.
For everybody? Okay. All right, I see a question in the Q&A. Can you put the volunteer application? Yeah, put in the volunteer application in the chat. What would data analysis role look like in the remission biome project? Ellie.
Excellent question.
Kat, you can take that one if you like.
Sure. I mean, there are a lot. So okay, let's break this down into some stages here. So one of the tasks needed is just collecting all the data from participants. So for some types of data, we have already set up things such that it is fairly simple for participants to send in their data. But sometimes we need to go through and check, okay, we have this data from these 30 people up to date. These 10 people, but it's not fully up to date. Let's see if they have, data from the last 2 or 3 months. And then these 10 people we haven't heard from, let's check with the team, see where they're at, and then maybe check in with them. So just collecting the data to start. That's step one. Then there is aggregating the data. So there's a lot of different things that need to be done here, but one of the biggest ones is putting all the data that is the same type of data together under the participant numbers rather than names. So we have to anonymize everything because part of the Remission Biome project is actually making all of this data in its raw form available to other researchers as well. So obviously we're going to do our own analysis and our own reports from it, but this data is going to continue to be available to researchers working now, or even years from now, as we learn more, we're going to look back at this data with new eyes, right? But to do that, it all has to be anonymized. And then there's the actual like analysis part of it. And that it depends on the type of data. So, there are people looking at microbiome data that are looking to see if there are changes in the microbiome that are common across a subset of participants or all participants. Are there changes in the data that are common in people who did have remission events versus those who didn't? Those who did have baseline increases versus those who didn't? Are there particular pathogens that show up in a subset that might correlate with a certain set of symptoms? Ton, just from that one piece of data, right? And then similar types of analysis for heart rate data, data on orthostatic tolerance, on, headaches, on other, common symptoms that have been collected through the Bearable app. And then there's the more sort of qualitative, the less numerical stuff, which is so for the pilot study, we did some interviews, and we do have some similar data for the R50, and we're likely to collect a little bit more as we wrap up. And sometimes there's things that the numbers don't catch that type of actual like getting to know people as people. Suddenly you learn so much more. So there's a lot of different steps with a lot of different tools. So depending on, people's strengths and interests, there's so much to be done with data, infinite things to be done with data, really.
All right.
I'm
We
getting
have
the video link for when the data analysis team presented
Yeah.
publicly, and I'm putting that in the chat. I could say like we have all different kinds of data. Maybe you don't realize we have stool tests, urine tests, blood tests,
Oh, yes. So many.
wearables, and then the bearable. And then the interviews are so invaluable because sometimes people just aren't able to log everything in checkbox form. But they can tell you some fantastic thing, like they haven't had a normal bowel movement in 6 months, and then after starting such and such, all of a sudden they're going and their bloat is going down, and you just want to jump up and down with them when you see their notes. So
Tess, is Tess still here?
no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got back. I had to leave
Oh,
and come
okay.
back.
Oh, okay. So there's a question in there if you want to talk about the planned papers. Has any project been published into a research journal? If so, is there a link or a name that we can
Not
look at
yet.
the paper?
So there's a paper in the works right now, which is about the transient remission events that we've seen so far. So that one's in the works. That'll probably be the first paper that comes out about a Renegade research specific project. But then there's also our team wrote a paper about the mechanical basis hypothesis or model of MECFS. And there's a preprint up for that. So I'll put that link in. So I would say I'll put the link in for the mechanical basis paper, and then Ellie was going to put in the link for the results meeting. So that'll give you some idea of the work that's being done.
You know, another volunteer opportunity would actually be to put together a bibliography of recent patient-led or patient-involved research, ours and other related organizations. It would be a fabulous resource if somebody wanted to volunteer to help make that into an accessible form. We can help gather the status of different research projects and where they've been published, or whether that's preprints or official or conferences or what, we can help gather all that information if somebody wants to volunteer to put it all into an accessible format.
Is the poster by Thomas who he presented that, is that picture available or is it on
I
X?
think the one
On
that
his
he put out on
X
Twitter.
account.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any projects with an upcoming publication plan we can volunteer for? So
Well,
all of the
all of them,
projects are
yeah.
planning publications. Yes.
Yeah.
So take your
And
pick.
different types too. So like all of them will have some form of purely public facing. So like a blog post or something like that to make it, accessible faster and to more people. And then all of them it takes longer, but are also going to go through more, traditional official publication channels as well.
Do you want to bring back the slide with the status of the projects?
Having trouble finding it here, so just a second.
So while Tess is looking to share again, this will be posted to our YouTube channel. People at renegade-research.org is the email, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter to hear about all of our events. So for the person who asked, which was anonymous, if there are any upcoming projects that plan to publish
All
papers
of
where you can
them.
volunteer. So this is the status of the projects as they are, so you know which ones are coming up sooner.
Yeah, so I'll mention specifically about remission biome and the anesthesia question. Like Ellie said, we have data from X, so we're going to want to write a blog about that, so about the preliminary findings. And then for remission biome, I mentioned this transient remission event paper. If we, have anybody that hops in to help with that, that is, in the works. It'll be coming out soon. But if you start volunteering now, if you want to help with editing, someone could potentially help with that one already. And then we have a bunch of the results for remission biome that they need to be written up. So there is a ton of opportunities for helping with the writing and the editing and
Yes.
publications and
And I want to
blogs.
highlight that editing because I know like some people, and it sounds like from the question, some people have like significant experience and know the difference between writing and editing. But it's a very important distinction. They are different skills and they use different parts of our brain. So, some of us are going to have more capability at one or the other depending on how we're feeling health-wise. But so if you are somebody that doesn't have any trouble with writing long form, that's actually kind of unusual right now in our population. So, if that's something that you are good at, we need that. And you don't necessarily need to know the ins and outs of the information because, you can sit with the team and kind of take down the information and put it into that format. That is amazing. Editing is also, it's a very different skill. Some people are very good at it. Some people have a lot of experience. Some people don't. But just, if that portion of your skills works well right now, even just simple proofreading is something that's needed, especially if, whoever our lead, science person is a little foggy as they're writing it up. There's going to be some extra proofreading needed. Often, I come from an academic background, and when you're publishing, even as a totally healthy person, you'll usually go through 5 or 6 different drafts at least. And the last 2 or 3 are really just fine tuning. And I think with us, we're finding that maybe 8 drafts is maybe more normal. So we definitely need people to help that step along.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate again about how important proofreading and editing are if people have those skills, and that you don't need to have the really scientific background, the deep understanding of these projects to make a huge contribution.
Yeah.
So,
And you
like
might
for
learn all that
example,
on the way.
yeah. So my PhD was in Earth and Planetary Science, and I was doing work in space physics. And I hired a friend I knew from high school who had no science background, she was working on her PhD in journalism, to read through, edit, proofread my whole dissertation. And it was so valuable because she noticed things to make things clearer but she was able to understand enough to really be able to make a difference, even though she hadn't been spending, 6 years working on the science.
Oh, yeah.
So it's super helpful.
Honestly, I think some of the reason that I was able to pivot so well is actually during my MA, I was in a writing lab. I was actually I was in that job where I was helping other people with their writing. And it happened to be that because I had a little bit of science background and everybody else working in the lab had zero science background, I got all the nursing students. So we had all the nursing students, they were coming back, for their masters in nursing or masters in public health. Um, and they're all doing case studies in their neighborhoods, but they have no writing experience. Um, but going through that and being like, okay, but what do you mean by this? What did this mean here? Because I see that you have an idea here, but it's not making it through to the paper. How do we explain this? That actually like taught me a lot about medical practice, which I found very, very useful. But yeah, you don't have to necessarily know because I knew nothing about, community nursing going in. I knew some about veterinary science, but not about humans and certainly not about, how to serve a rural community in a way that was, safe and accessible. I knew nothing. So you don't have to, if you have one skill, we can pair you with somebody that has the other skill.
And that just reminded me again, translation. We might need help with too. If you speak a
Yeah.
language and you want to
Yes.
help us translating some of our material.
Yeah.
Into Spanish.
Honestly, even highlights, like,
Amazing.
Mhm.
yeah, even if it's just like a
Summarize, yeah,
synopsis.
summarize
Yeah.
in other languages or something like that. You reminded me that to say, even if you only can read one paragraph and commit to one paragraph of reading and you find one typo, it might be the important typo. It's very valuable to us. That you catch one thing, you report it maybe via Slack or an email to somebody, and then you can go back to rest. We honor and value uh, if you only have a baby spoon that day, but you want to do something. We're not making you do
Mhm.
something. You want to do something. You're motivated to do something. The other thing I want to mention, if anybody has experience with merch, that's something we might be getting into, trying to get ready for the holiday season. We might not. We don't know. But if you're good on those platforms, um, hit me up.
Or
And most of our
even if you're an artist, that's
artists, graphic
Mhm.
also,
design, all of
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
Amazing. All right.
Actually,
So we
not
don't
just for
have,
merch. I mean, art having people with any form of either art or graphic design is also really useful for the science end. So yeah, the merch is
Mhm.
fun, and that I would love to have a Renegade Research shirt, think something like that. But also, being able to take the science and put it in a visual form is also,
True.
that's something that is so I'm sure you've all seen, when you get a graphical abstract of a paper, it's so much easier to grasp. It's so much faster. And then you can put it on things like social media and stuff. You reach so many more people that way. You make it understandable to more people, and that's very, very important. So that's a huge skill that we don't have much of.
True.
yeah. So we're up at the hour and we don't have any more questions. So we'll keep it to here so people who have limited spoons for video can go rest. Thank you, everybody. And again, the email is people at renegade-research.org. And the volunteer application. Email us also if you're not ready to say, yes, I want to be, a volunteer, but you want to hear more, about how we work with each other in the organization, or you want to discuss more with a particular team that you're interested in, but are not ready to commit to an application. All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.